They finished second. They were 7-9, I believe. It's the Los Angeles Chargers. This is our Los Angeles Chargers off-season preview. And just to start out, these are their notable free agents: Melvin Ingram, Hunter Henry, Mike Pouncey, Denzel Perryman, Michael Davis, Forrest Lamp, Sam Tevy, Dan Feeney, Rayshawn Jenkins, and Michael Badgley. In my opinion, they should not retain Melvin Ingram. You should let him walk because he doesn't fit in the defensive scheme. You retain Hunter Henry because you need to give Justin Herbert weapons. Mike Pouncey, you let him walk. He's only played 5. He played 5 games in 2019 and 0 in 2020. You can't really bank on him again. You can't rely on him in 2021, so I'd let him walk. Denzel Perryman, I'm kind of iffy about because he is a really solid contributor, and at the inside linebacker spot, he could make an impact, but I kind of lean towards Drew Tranquill over Denzel Perryman, which is why I wouldn't be opposed to letting him walk. Then the next guy, Michael Davis. I think you bring in Michael Davis back because he was huge for the Chargers. He really developed this past season. I would look to bring him back. And then the offensive linemen, Forrest Lamp, Sam Tevy, Dan Feeney. I think out of those 3 guys, I'd bring back Dan Feeney because he can play the center or the guard spot. He's very versatile. He's not that good, but, he's versatile, so that's worth something. And with an offensive line that has more continuity, he possibly can be better than what he showed on tape this past season. Their offensive linemen that are free agents are really kind of depth offensive linemen. They aren't starting caliber outside of Mike Pouncey. And then you got a guy like Rayshawn Jenkins, who was very huge in the safety spot. He was their best safety this past season with Derwin James out. They have a young safety in Nasir Adderley, but I don't know how much you can really rely on him. I'd look to bring back Rayshawn Jenkins, and then Michael Badgley, their kicker. Probably going to bring him back. Hopefully he becomes more consistent and accurate this upcoming season. But these are some moves they can make. They can cut Trey Turner and save $11 million. I wouldn't do it because he's a Pro Bowl caliber guard and they need as much offensive line help as they can get. And I'm counting on him to be healthy in 2021. And if they cut Linval Joseph, they can save $7 million. And I think Justin Jones, their other defensive tackle, and Jerry Tillery deserve a shot. Justin Jones was actually good this past year, so I don't think that Linval Joseph would be a huge loss, even though he was great against the run this past season. I think they can make up for his loss and his departure. But all in all, notable guys I think they should let walk are Melvin Ingram and Mike Pouncey, and they should retain Hunter Henry and Michael Davis and Rayshawn Jenkins.
Yeah, I actually agree completely. I would be fine letting Melvin Ingram walk. I think that the most important 2 guys to bring back, I would consider putting Hunter Henry in this list, but I would say Michael Davis and Rayshawn Jenkins are the first 2 guys that I would bring back because Brandon Staley, you saw last year with the Rams how important that secondary was and how good that secondary group was. So if you can shore up a solid secondary, putting that in Brandon Staley's system, I think that it would be nice continuity from what the Rams were doing. So I think shoring up that secondary is an important thing to start with. Hunter Henry, obviously, if you can keep that continuity with Justin Herbert and keep as many weapons in the building as possible, I know he's going to get a bit pricey, especially because he is, I think, pretty far and away the best tight end on the market this year. I would like to keep him, even though he will be pricey. And then I think one of those offensive linemen that are free agents, I would bring back, maybe it's Sam Tevy, maybe it's Forrest Lamp. I don't think you could go wrong with either of those guys, but I think one of those offensive linemen should be retained. But most importantly, I think the secondary is where you need to target, and Mike Davis and Rayshawn Jenkins should be the guys.
So the Los Angeles Chargers have $33 million projected in cap space. That could be $44 million if they cut Trey Turner only and keep Linval Joseph, or it could be $50 million if they cut both of them. They're switching to a 3-4 defensive scheme, I assume, because Brandon Staley is the head coach now. But who are some of your free agent targets?
I think they need to shore up the offensive line, so that is a position I would look at first. Again, obviously the 2 names that jump off the page, Joe Thuney and Brandon Scherf, would be the 2 guys that I would look into. Outside of that, Maybe they could shore up the wide receiver position. I don't know. It would be a lower tier target. It wouldn't be any of the top guys, obviously. I don't think they would be on an Allen Robinson or any of those guys. But a lower tier wide receiver, I think, would be a solid move, just helping Justin Herbert out, bringing in targets for him and keeping him going, with a solid offense. Maybe a different running back. I'm not that high on Austin Eckler. I know a lot of people like him, but between the injuries that have been a problem, and I also just don't think he's a number one running back. Like, I don't think he's a 3-down back. I think he's more of a change of pace back, and I think between the tackle runner would be more efficient to have with Justin Herbert. So if they could bring in a between the tackle running back, I think it would make sense. And then a cornerback. Maybe a guy like Xavier Rhodes, or, I don't think that they would be in on a guy like Richard Sherman or Patrick Peterson, but I do think a guy like Xavier Rhodes makes sense. I don't think that they're going to bring back both of Casey Hayward and I'm getting all mixed up on my pages now. But I don't know that they're going to keep the same cornerbacks. I think Casey Hayward could be a potential cap hit, but I think cornerback would be another position to target. If it's not Xavier Rhodes, I think they go through the draft and replace him there. Maybe a guy like J.C. Horn, but that's another position they had to shore up.
So for me, I think the positions they need to shore up, as you mentioned, at the offensive line, and I think they need an edge rusher, outside linebacker, edge rusher. To make this system work, especially the defensive system, you need an edge rusher and you need fast cover inside linebacker type players. For me, I think on defense, a name, of course, is Shaq Barrett. Everybody is going to try to go after Shaq Barrett, but I think he stays in Tampa Bay. But a guy I'd look at who plays for a division rival is Shelby Harris. Shelby Harris is a phenomenal run-stuffing defensive nose tackle. He would be phenomenal in Brandon Staley's defense, and a guy that played for Brandon Staley in Los Angeles, who fits this defensive scheme perfect, who had 10.5 sacks this past season, Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd going to the Los Angeles Chargers would be a great move for the Chargers. Leonard Floyd wouldn't have to move. It makes perfect sense for both parties, and it's a perfect defensive scheme for Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd and Joey Bosa rushing the passer together, that would be awesome. And Nwosu on the other as the other outside linebacker, it would be awesome. And then on offense, you mentioned Joe Thuney and Brandon Scherf. They could get a guard, but if they keep Trey Turner, I don't think they need to go that route because I think Dan Feeney or Forrest Lamp can play the other guard spot. I'd go center. And the guy that's on the picture here, I'd go Corey Lindsey. The Packers and Corey Lindsey have not talked about a contract extension yet. They have not talked yet. That's usually a bad sign. The Packers don't have the cap space to even bring him in and sign him to a contract that he would like. The Chargers, I think, are the best landing spot for Corey Lindsey. And I think outside of the tackle spot, the center spot is the most important position on the offensive line. It's the guy that's snapping the ball to your quarterback. Having a guy like Corey Lindsey, who was the best center in football this past season, go to the Chargers would help out Justin Herbert tremendously. Another guy to look at that's not a free agent, but that's going to be on the trade market is Orlando Brown. He plays right tackle for the Ravens right now, but he said that if the Ravens don't move him to left tackle, then he's not going to play there, and he wants to get traded. So that's another guy to look at. If they can get a Corey Lindsey, Orlando Brown, and a Leonard Floyd in this offseason, that's a huge win to me. And bringing back Michael Davis to pair up with Casey Hayward Jr. and Chris Harris Jr., that would be phenomenal. But they should also look at K'Wan Williams. He's a slot who's really good at man-to-man. He was one of the best slots this past season for the 49ers. I think he would be a good option to bring in. And if the Chargers miss out on Leonard Floyd, they could also bring in Hassan Reddick, who had 12.5 sacks, I believe, for the Cardinals, and he fits into that 3-4 defensive scheme perfectly. But all in all, I think the free agent signings and the priority players that the Chargers should place a lot of their chips on are Corey Lindsey, Leonard Floyd, and Shelby Harris as well. I wouldn't rule out Andre Villanueva as well to shore up that left tackle spot. But I think they have the cap space to play with, and they should go out all out and sign Corey Lindsey. I think that is their prized possession this offseason, getting Corey Lindsey.
Yeah, you want to shore up that offensive line because you want to do as much as possible to protect Justin Herbert. You saw what happened with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati with all those problems on the offensive line, and him ended up getting injured. At edge rusher, another name I think they look at, Justin Houston. Although he's the same age as Melvin Ingram, I think he's a lot more productive still at this age. So if they can't get many of those top-tier guys or even a Leonard Floyd like you mentioned, I think Justin Houston would be a good option. Might be a little bit cheaper than a guy like Shaq Barrett and maybe not as sought after as those top guys.
Yeah, I agree. Now in the draft, the Chargers have the 13th pick, and I have 3 players that they can go with this pick. The first one is Rashawn Slater. I think he's a phenomenal offensive tackle, and the drop-off between him and Penny Sewell is not that much. There are some scouts that think he's even better than Penny Sewell or on the same level. If Rashawn Slater is there, I'd go with Rashawn Slater. There is a question mark of whether he is going to be there or not, but if he is, I'd go with him. Another guy would be Elijah Vera Tucker. He can shore up that guard spot for the Chargers if he's drafted. And a third guy, it's rumored that he has character issues, but when I say that this guy is a top 5 talent in this draft, and he has the potential to not only be a Pro Bowler, but an All-Pro in this league, is Micah Parsons. He's literally a freak of nature. He's super fast. He's tall. He's muscular. He can do it all on the football field. He can cover. He's a great blitzer. He plays aggressive. He is a guy that I would want on my team if I know that he is going to perform and not get into trouble outside of the field, which is a problem, but he has mentors. You know, he's close with Navarro Bowman, who was a Pro Bowl linebacker for the 49ers. He's also, I forgot who else he's close with. I forgot his name right now, but he was a linebacker that played in the NFL for quite some time too. So he has some guidance and mentorship. I would look to bring in Micah Parsons, and with later picks, if they lose Hunter Henry, maybe bring in Brevin Jordan, who was good in Miami. I like him a lot. Or Jason Owe, another pass rusher out of Penn State who played with Micah Parsons, and Jay Tufele. If they lose Linval Joseph, if they cut Linval Joseph, Jay Tufele would be a guy that has talent that can maybe shore up that defensive tackle spot if Jerry Tillery or Justin Jones don't pan out. But those are the guys I think they should target in this draft. In the first round, Rashawn Slater is the number 1 priority. I think if Micah Parsons is there, you take the chance. And if not, Elijah Vera Tucker, you go with him and shore up that guard spot.
Yeah, you mentioned offensive line. I think offensive line should be the focus. Rashawn Slater is a guy that I would target, and that would be a top choice for me. I think that would be a no-brainer. But if they want to go in a different direction, I think that cornerback could be another place they look to target. Again, Brandon Staley's system, I think you need a very strong secondary, like he had in Los Angeles with the Rams. And I think there are a bunch of good options that could be on the board. Patrick Surtain is one from Alabama. He had a great year and was covering pretty much elite talent every weekend. Another guy, Virginia Tech, Caleb Farley. He runs a 4.3. He's very speedy. Another guy, J.C. Horn from South Carolina, super versatile. So those are a couple cornerbacks I think they could target if they want to go a different direction. But I think offensive line would be the place that I would go before all else because, like I said, it's all about protecting that guy up there.
Exactly, Justin Herbert. This offense is about getting Justin Herbert help. We'll see if the Los Angeles Chargers do that this upcoming offseason.